Happy New Year! Hope you're having a nice day, family members, and a nice year while you're at it. I'd like to talk to you today about something that really dawned on me when I was sitting around over the holidays. And might not seem like it has a real strong connection until I kind of get into it, so let's go there. The moon landing. So yeah, I think we're all pretty aware that there's the landing conspiracy theory, or more accurately, that there was no moon landing conspiracy theory, which is very, very classic in terms of conspiracy theories. Your conspiracy theory granddaddy, one of the old school ones, right? And there's a lot of people out there who legitimately believe it these days. It seems like they're like, yeah, we didn't land on the moon. That just seems absolutely absurd. Da 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 da. And to a certain extent, you can kind of almost get that logic because it's not like we've done it again recently. We went to the moon like 3 times and then just never went back. That does seem a little bit sus. So I will give people that, but no, that's just because there wasn't a whole lot of money to be made in it at the time, guys. You got to understand. It was all about showing that we weren't complete losers when it came to going to the space places, in the United States. We were so freaking behind. We weren't the first in space. We didn't spend the first animal to space. We didn't spend the first man or the first woman to space. We were just way the heck behind. Russia was embarrassing the United States, and so we had to pick something that we could be like, this is the ultimate goal. And if we beat the Russians to that, then we win. And so that's what we did. And so then it wasn't, nearly as politically important anymore. And so they starved the program for funds until it, kind of quietly died. And then we never went back to the moon. Like we keep talking about it, but hadn't happened yet. So, it's just a very tragically American capitalist story as opposed to something that is worthy of this epic conspiracy theory. But, that's boring. People love their conspiracy theories, right? And, again, we're talking about something that happened in 1969, and it's 2026. Like, we're talking about a very long time ago at this point. When it's been like 60 years since something happened, it's really easy for people to not really buy it, But, and this is why I wanted to talk about this. I was sitting around here, my mom and her best friend were just hanging out, talking as they do. And they were talking about what their friend's dad did for a living. Doesn't sound like that big of a interesting story, but their dads and her dad all worked at the Cape Kennedy. Yes, they grew up in Cocoa, Florida, where pretty much most of the people who lived and worked at the Cape, a lot of them lived. A lot of them lived in like Cocoa or Titusville or something like that. Like the place where my dad and mom's family raised them was here at the Space Coast, So their perception of like a moon landing conspiracy is a lot different. And mine too, because while I was raised in West Virginia, my parents were raised here, and when, it was the holidays or summers or something, we were always coming down here to visit family. So, it's not a very mystified topic for me. Like, I've always, like, known that my granddaddy worked at, NASA and da, da, da. He actually, uh, it was never very clear to me what he did. I think he said something about like changing light bulbs or something, but it was really like a self-deprecating joke. There was a lot of people working at the Cape for any number of reasons. He was one of the people that like did downrange stuff, so like recoveries and things like that, which meant going to like Ascension Island and all sorts of stuff. I mean, it was big doings. When you look it up online, the Apollo program, they'll say had roughly 400,000 people working on it. And, that's sort of like nationwide. That includes, where they were developing parts or training astronauts in like Texas and stuff all over the country. This is not just something that happened here. But there's also things like the story my mom told me when I told her I wanted to make this video. She said, they had just moved here, and they were living in a condo out on the beach. They hadn't gotten their permanent home down here yet. And my mom was like maybe about 3 years old or something, and her mom had taken her to the beach, and it was because they were, my granddaddy told her, oh, there's a launch. If you go to the beach, you'll be able to see it. But it wasn't supposed to be, like publicly known about. It was a secret launch, okay? And so my mom was there's this little girl bopping around having a good time on the beach, and some man comes up to her and says, "Oh, hey, little girl, what are you doing on the beach today?" And my grandma apparently was like terrified that her little 3-year-old daughter was going to be like, "My daddy told me there'd be a rocket launch," or something like that, and he'd get in trouble for, telling his wife top secret information or some shit. It didn't happen, but that it just goes to show you, yeah, there was a lot of supposed secrecy around the people who worked on the moon landing, but their wives and their kids knew more than they were supposed to have known. Probably their neighbors and maybe their barbers and stuff. The whole community really was defined by the opening of the like launch pad, basically Cape Canaveral, uh, launching area for NASA. There were people like my other set of grandparents who moved down here because they just wanted to get out of West Virginia. And my granddaddy was not the sort that would have that kind of job, but his wife was a working nurse. And she was always very proud of the fact that she delivered astronauts' babies, like when they were living in the area and their wives were pregnant, and if babies were born in the area, they went to her hospital, and she would be the nurse midwife that did that. Like, the whole community was very, 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 very focused on what was going on at NASA, and in some ways very much still is. There's always risks of more budget cuts to NASA, no matter how much good work they do, no matter how many jobs they provide, they're always on the budget chopping block because people are so anti-science in this country right now. But every time that happens, it's a terrible thing for the economy here, and those are good jobs that go away. And when those good jobs go away, it's even harder to find people to kind of fill those places in the community. And so Yeah, 400,000 people might have been like directly involved in the program, but it would have been a heck of a lot more than people than that actually would have known what was going on firsthand, or secondhand at the very most. And I can tell you right now, I don't live in Cocoa Beach. I actually live fairly far away, like maybe an hour, hour and a half away, depending on traffic. I hear every rocket launch. The rocket launches are so loud. You can hear them from, miles and miles and miles, tens of miles away. It like rattles the windows in my house. Like they couldn't fake rocket launches in a way that wouldn't be obvious to everyone who's here. Because it's obvious that they're not fake if you live anywhere in the area. I remember once when I was probably in college or something, my mom and I were driving from West Virginia to Florida, like we did on a regular basis, and we just happened to be driving through Jacksonville. Now, if you don't know anything about Florida, Jacksonville is about as north as you can be in Florida. It's about as far away from, the Space Coast where the rockets are launched as you can be and be in the state of Florida. We're talking, I don't know, maybe 2.5, 3 hour drive, again, depending on traffic. And my mom and I are just like going through the city here, and I look up and I'm like, what's that? And I could see something in the sky that I knew could not be like a helicopter or an airplane or anything like that, because the trajectory was very clearly out of the atmosphere. Like I could see it leaving Earth's atmosphere. Like, what the hell was that? Was that a UFO? What did we just see? Because that could not have been a plane. That could not have been anything that I would have just immediately thought of. And the next day we read the papers and it was the space shuttle. So, I was right. It clearly was leaving Earth's trajectory. You could see that. Like, there are too many people, like millions of people, who could bear firsthand witness to you to prove to you that NASA is more or less on the up and up, that they are definitely going to space, and that they definitely have been to the moon. And it's really, really, really funny how many people still do actually take this kind of conspiracy theory seriously. You would need literally hundreds of thousands of people involved in faking something and then never telling anyone, and there never being any evidence to prove it for like 65 years. What do you think the odds are? What do you think the odds are that could happen? We're horrible. Humans are horrible at keeping secrets. We really are. Like, a lot of the time when people get arrested and convicted for murder, it's because they implicated themselves to somebody, or for other crimes. This happens a lot. People can't help but tell on themselves. And maybe they believe the person they're talking to is someone they can trust. Maybe they just weren't thinking about it in the moment. Any number of reasons. We're impulsive, we get drunk, we do all sorts of weird, stupid stuff. You're going to tell me in more than half a century, nobody in those hundreds of thousands of people that were officially aware of what was going on would have come forward and said, oh, this was a hoax, or would have accidentally left evidence behind? If the moon landing was a hoax, it would be such a mind-numbingly ridiculous thing to actually pull off that it would be bigger than the idea of it being real. You do realize that, right? Like, it would take a heck of a lot more resources and a heck of a lot more secrecy and a heck of a lot more inexplicable logic to believe that the moon landing didn't happen. You literally just have to be so intellectually lazy that you hadn't thought about it for a minute. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry if you came into this being a moon landing conspiracy believer, or even just a doubter of the moon landing. I don't think you could have thought about it very much, honestly, if you thought that that was the case. It's just, you do know what technology was in 1969, right? Like, they didn't even have like digital displays. You know how hard it would have been to fake? Like, technically? I mean, our special effects, we think they're really great today, but they're still pretty obvious. I mean, if you're watching something that was made with top level CGI, every movie magic effect possible, you can usually clock it, right? And that's now, decades and decades and decades later. You think back then, when they just had fuzzy black and white TVs, they didn't have VHS. You think they could do that? Really? You don't understand the miracle of the technology around you, I'm sorry to say then. The world is really, really advanced compared to 1969 when it comes to technology. We can do things we couldn't have even imagined back then, now. And it would be pretty impossible for us to fake a moon landing now, too, you know? And that's possibly because, we forget about the fact that people are looking at the moon all the damn time. There's all sorts of different, like, amateur astronomers. There's different countries and their astronomy programs. I mean, like, there's a lot of eyes on the moon at any given time. I think that's the point, though. Like, I think the point of being a conspiracy theorist like that is literally rejecting anything that you don't understand. Thinking it must be fake if you don't personally understand it. It's a very self-centered point of view. Now, I do know that there are people who who engage with conspiracy theories just because they think they're kind of fun, and or funny. And I have to say to you, they're not. They're not fun or funny. Conspiracy theories right now are kind of destroying our world. It's the justification for a lot of bigoted violence, of a lot of, like, genocide and horrible things going on in the world. And if you think being intellectually lazy is just fun, and you're just blowing off steam, and you can spread and make jokes about conspiracy theories and it doesn't hurt anything, you're wrong. You're just wrong. Here's the thing about conspiracy theories that people don't realize, and false claims in general that people don't realize. If you hear the same false claim repeated more than a few times, your brain is going to start thinking it's true. Even if the reason why you know about that theory is someone debunking it. Kind of like what I'm doing now. That's one thing that did give me pause in making a video like this, is like, with conspiracy theories, just repeating the conspiracy theory, even as a function of debunking it, does on some level spread it. I think that maybe I can hopefully provide a little different perspective on this for people, because I can tell you that, I'm like third generation here of people who have firsthand experience of what's going on with the space program in the United States. Maybe that might mean something. I don't profit from it anyway. I've never worked for the government in any capacity. Right now I don't work for anybody in any capacity because I'm disabled. So I have literally no financial hat in the ring at all. And I can tell you, my front window shakes when they launch these dang rockets. You'll just be sitting around and all of a sudden you'll hear a loud noise. You're like, oh, I didn't even know that there was a launch today. If you look on my various socials, you will find multiple videos and pictures of launches. I can testify that the conspiracy is so ridiculously illogical that anyone who thinks there's any potential logic in it just can not have thought it through even slightly. Like, maybe that makes a difference. But also, I just kind of wanted to take a chance take an opportunity to talk about the space program and things like that. I like that very much, obviously. I have gone out of my way to take videos and pictures of launches. A lot of people who are from here don't really even care. It's such a normalized thing. Yeah, sometimes you hear launches go off, no big deal. Sometimes you hear them practicing bombing raids up in Ocala National Forest, like an hour north of here or so. Oh well, no big deal. Actually, I do think that's a big deal, and I don't like that at all. But hey, that's a whole nother topic. Anyway, when they created the Space Center, they needed to have a lot of secure area around it. And one of the best side products of the whole program is they created a wildlife preserve, a national conservation area out there around the Space Center. And that's been one of my favorite places to go birding. I love going out there, and I love that wonderful part of Florida natural history exists. Totally as a byproduct of us deciding to go to the moon. It's true. That's actually true. So much of the Florida coastline has been completely developed up. We've lost the natural environment along the coast. And yet there's this huge chunk of land that is preserved permanently as just a byproduct of this program. The evidences are just everywhere. The only way that you can believe in the moon landing conspiracy is if you've actively avoided looking for it. And I don't think that that's as uncommon as we'd like to believe. I do believe that people don't understand the value of evidence. For example, I was just scrolling around on Facebook, bored, it's holidays, not much going on. And I came across a post that was posted by a local restaurant that my family likes. And what it was a petition that they had posted basically saying that there's this woman who is going around and suing all of these local businesses for not being ADA compliant in bad faith just to make money. And it's horrible, and somebody needs to stop her. And I went to the petition website and I read through the whole thing, and it was just accusations. There was no proof, nothing at all that proved any sort of intent, positive or negative, on whoever it was that was filing these lawsuits. No proof that there were any lawsuits filed. No proof that the businesses that had been sued weren't, breaking their ADA compliance, that were innocent of wrongdoing. There was no evidence, nothing. And not any link to any place where you could get evidence. Now, we're talking about a story where there would be dozens of court cases involved. How hard would it have been to provide some of that documentation, or link to a place where you could view some of the documentation to at least prove the cases exist? There was nothing. And so I commented on it like, look, I don't know if the accusations in this petition are accurate or not. They might be. But they are, as far as I can see, simply accusations. I cannot see any level of proof on this website or anywhere that I can go to get evidence to support these claims. So I'm supposed to believe that a disabled woman is acting in bad faith based on businesses who are upset that they were told they needed to become ADA compliant, and just take it on faith that that's what happened. I'm just supposed to believe this business over this disabled woman for no reason, I guess. And I just commented that I found it pretty disturbing how many people were just chiming in and being like, I'll support this petition, this is terrible, blah, 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 when the only resource provided had no evidence or proof at all stating their case. And boy, did I get some really mad people in the comments like, these aren't just accusations, these are true. And I'm like, my point is, the petition, if it's going to make these accusations, needs to provide supporting material. The fact that people are just taking it at face value, that what they're saying happened is what happened, is just disturbing to me. People are just going to take their side over her side because they heard their side first. I mean, I don't know why. And I kept getting people who were missing the point. It's like, you providing me whatever proof or logic that you want to provide me is beside the point. The point is, this idea was put out there in the world with no evidence, and people were willing to accept it. And that is dangerous. And that's the problem with conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories are bolstered by their lack of evidence. In fact, they're bolstered also when evidence to the contrary is provided. The more proof that someone tries to provide that a conspiracy theory is wrong, the more determined the adherents of the conspiracy theory are going to be to believe it. Why would you even attempt to prove me wrong if there was nothing here, is the logic, I think. I made a video yesterday about how young men especially, but I'd say all people in this country, are really not given the tools to exercise their emotional well-being, their emotional health. In school, they teach you how to exercise your body, but they don't teach you how to exercise your emotional well-being. And I think that's kind of destroying society in a lot of ways, because you have to exercise all parts of yourself. There's some people who find physical exercise easy and interesting and are really reluctant to do any sort of emotional exercise because they find that difficult and challenging. And there's people who are the exact opposite. Physical exercise is challenging, but emotional exercise is not challenging. So they're more apt to do more of one than the other, right? And this is a failure of our educational system to want children to think critically. This is teaching to the test gone wild. When all you need to do is know how to maximize the potential you have to get away with getting a good score on a standardized test, do you really learn how to exercise your intellect? Do you really learn how to research when it's so easy to get AI to write your paper, or to just go to Wikipedia and copy paste, or even just like go to all of their source links and just copy paste from them? If you don't really learn how to exercise your intellectual capacity, how to know how to question something in an actually productive way, you might end up thinking that questioning is the intellectual exercise and that's it. But it's not just asking the questions. It's knowing how to find evidence for the answers. Conspiracy theories are all about questioning and then trying to find evidence that supports the idea that you want. Instead of trying to find evidence of the truth and then basing what you think off of that evidence. It's basically the standardized testing way of doing things. Well, I'm able to come up with the question, that's good enough. And it's not nearly good enough. It's not nearly good enough. You owe yourself better than that. I'm going to be quick here, I think. I was trying to find out if Lady Gaga was a billionaire this morning. And so far, I don't think so, but it's hard to tell. But there's no evidence, no clear evidence that I can find that indicates that she personally is a billionaire. But if you go on Reddit, there's a thread. Someone says, yo, yeah, very confidently, she's a billionaire.